Thank you guys for coming out Friday morning early, doing breakfast, and whoever built my wall, I appreciate that. It saved me a lot of time this morning. Didn't want to show up any earlier than I had to, right? So thank you all for that. Thank you CCC TC for having us out, and thank you for Lezzer and Derek kind of putting this thing together. So a little bit about our product. So this material, has anyone seen, who's seen this before? Has anyone seen the Evolve Stone? Handful of us. Where'd you guys see it?
We were showing a video of it last week.
Last week. All right, cool. Just a little history about us. We've been doing, out of the same kind of material I've been doing across the country and even internationally, climbing walls, theme parks. If you guys go to like Dick's Field and Stream or Cabela's or Bass Pro, a lot of times you'll see a mountain in the background with the taxidermy on it. That was something that there's a chance that we built eons ago. Material's been around since late 90s. It's a super lightweight composite. I'll tell you what, if you want to check that out, pass it around. That's what we're dealing with. So it's about 2 pounds a square foot. And the typical application is probably going to be what we're seeing today. I got 7/16 OSB here. This is my shear panel. I'm going to hang a weather-resistant barrier and then a rain screen. Anyone got a free hand can help me put up the WRB real quick? Anybody? Want to help me put this wrap up real quick? Somebody got a free hand? Oh, look at that. A Lezzer volunteer. So if you don't mind just holding that, Mark, I'll start getting it going. Go ahead, pinch it tight. Yeah. So typical nailing pattern for this WRB. This is a Type R, Type 1, Type 2, passes the ASTM E2556. It's 32 inches on center, but we're just showing what we can for today. It's a 3-foot roll. Thank you, Bubba. If you don't mind, I'll put the rain screen up as well. So this is a typical detail that you're seeing over any kind of framing anyways, typically on a house. Now for this, we're going to do a little bit of measuring, and I'm going to make a cut somewhere. So this product here is a rain screen. You're seeing this more and more nowadays, and this is going behind our siding, right? I've got a hydrophobic facing on here. If you take your orange juice and you're splashing on here, you'll see it bead all up and run out. All right, that's a layer of defense that we have. And then behind that, this is the critical element here, right? This is an 1/8 inch gap, which allows for rapid drainage and drying. So we're going to hang this, but when we wrap it, we're going to relieve it at the corners. We're not going to wrap it around the corner. We relieve it at the corner to prevent tenting and bunching. All right, so I'm going to make a cut real fast. So what do I got here? 60, 61. If you just layer down, make a cut real quick. I see where I am here, Mark. Any questions so far about the setup? Rain screen and weather resistant barrier, that's pretty rational, pretty normal, right? You got a question, just shout out. I know it's still early. You got to get some coffee in these fellas and lady. So Lezzer has this in 4-foot rolls. 4-foot roll is nice because, you know, 1 or 2 guys can handle it real easily. You know, they make it in all kinds of shapes and sizes. But one thing I will tell you about the rain screen is, thank you, Bubba. You got it. One thing I will tell you about the rain screen that's nice is Lezzer's got this dark one here, and you'll see in a minute as we're putting the stones up. You know, the stones will fit together as a dry stack, but having a dark rain screen behind it, one, it prevents you from seeing the white weather-resistant barrier, and the other thing that it does, it gives you a nice dark reveal. So Mark, if you don't mind holding this up for me here, I'm going on this side. We're gonna just leave it long. Okay. Just like that. I'm gonna hold you tight at the corner. Just a little bit back from the corner. Thank you, Bubba. So nailing pattern for this, cap nails, 12-inch centers, or 12, I think I got 16 here, 12 there, every square foot. This is your typical setup. You would flash around your windows like normal. You would bring your house wrap around the windows and doors like normal. Treat all your openings as normal. And if you haven't used one of these cap nail guns, I recommend them. It'll save your fingers. It's a lot easier than doing a waffle face hammer with cap nails. So yeah. So that's really it for how I'm treating bulk water, how I'm treating rain-driven water. That's my system for how I'm controlling moisture, right? This is over. We'll address foundation here in a minute, but this is over traditional framing. Any questions so far, guys, about our moisture handling system? All right, we'll see how it works here in a second. Evolve stone, available through the Lezzer folks here. I've got 5 different styles, right, and four different colors. And each style comes in a box. I got 14¼ square feet in a box. Did everyone get a chance to feel that stone? Right, pretty light, right? So about 2 pounds a square foot. A box is no more than 30 pounds. So I can stack in the back of my pickup truck or the back of my work van, I can put 1,700 square feet without, bottoming out the wheels. So you can really pack a whole lot in the car or the work vehicle. So traditionally, getting set up, I'll address the corner here in a second, but generally when you're doing a job, you're working right to left, left to right, you're doing your layout, you got to figure out if you want to start in the corner, if you're doing exterior, if you're doing the inside, and you got a fireplace, you got to figure out how you want to lay it out. I typically like to spend a little extra time in my layout to figure out how I can make the least cuts as possible. And sometimes I'll use trim, right, to space the stones out evenly to where I don't have to make any cuts for the entire day. But for our purposes today, we'll just get to showing you, how the stone goes up. So I've got here, this is very important, 16 gauge stainless steel nail, right? Because I'm going through 7/16 OSB, I got a 2-inch nail because I want to be out the back of that shear panel by 1/4 to 1/2 inch, right? That's what we need to achieve. On average, the average thickness of a stone is about 5/8 of an inch. The tallest Hulkin stone that we have would be about 1 1/4 inch, 1.5 inches, and then at the thinnest spot we taper down to about 1/4 inch. Okay. Any questions about that? So our typical nailing pattern for anything under 10 inches, you're only seeing about 2 nails. Anything over that gets an additional nail every 2 to 3 inches. Anything over 7.5 inches would get 2 rows. So the beauty of the product is that nail head, it's not highly visible. I don't know, can you guys see it from where you're sitting? Where you're eating? No? No, so that's the beauty of it. So that's why, you know, a lot of people have attempted a mechanical fastening stone, whether it be a panel or this or that, and there's always a flange or a screw pattern or some kind of hold off that they have to fuss with. We're able to go right over this rain screen, right over our weather resistant barrier with just 16 gauge finish nailer. You can find these for pretty cheap. I think I got this one for 128 bucks. This is my pneumatic one. They make every tool platform has a battery operated one. I got a DeWalt here, works perfectly fine, but I like to show, you know, more often than not, guys on the job site that are pros are probably using their pneumatic equipment. It allows you a little bit more speed. It allows you fine-tuned adjustments with the pressure on your compressor and then the depth settings on your gun. So that's really it. So again, 14¼ square feet in a box. Each box has a style pre-blended in it, right? So if I was working on a money wall, I could just grab a piece and go because I know the next stone is going to fit. And what I'm doing here is I'm going to be staggering my horizontal and my vertical seams every so often, right? So you can see where you can hang several square feet at a pretty good clip. You see, I'm just trying to break up my horizontal and my verticals as I'm going along the wall. Any questions about how a style would come out of a box? That would be a typical detail. So eventually you're going to run into how you transition. So we have these, this is the corners are built for the style. This is a corner for a different style, but we have the ability to use a pre-manufactured corner that comes from our facility. You also have the ability to, and this is something that's really, really cool. You have the ability to, with the blade that comes with your saw, you know, this is just a regular general purpose blade. You have the ability to make your own miters out in the field, and that's kind of what a lot of times I recommend. If you're a guy with any kind of skills, a lot of times it'll save you some time. It'll save you some money on coming up with your own corner solutions. So I'm going to build my own miter right here, okay? So everyone will be able to have a chance to play with the material and do some of it themselves, but that's about as tight as my miter is going to get. And cutting it out of the same stone is very, very helpful. You want to pass those two pieces around? Check that out. So you've got the outside corner as a potential solution. That's an outside 90. Right? The other beauty about making your own, building your own miter is sometimes I'm on a job that I didn't frame out and the wall's a little wonky, or maybe you've got a kitchen bump out and you're not dealing with 90s, right? You got 135, you got 20, you know, whatever your angle might be, you can adjust for that on your miter deck or your table saw or whatever you want to cut it with. You don't need any kind of special tools for, you know, doing this. Someone you know probably has a setup in order to get started slinging a Evolve stone on a wall. But yeah, those are some of your solutions. Another thing that we do, I took a scrap from Lezzer's yard the other day, cut it up. I just built myself a trimmed out 90. This is Stealth, right? It's got a shoulder in it. And I just took two pieces, shot them together this morning. They sell a 90-degree corner already pre-built. You know, I think they sell them in 16 or 18-foot sticks. But I'll build something like that, which will allow me to cover my corner like that And then I can start from here and work my way out. And because that shoulder's in there, I can find a piece that's a little bit graduated. It's a little bit thinner there on that side. I can tuck that behind that shoulder and keep moving on the job. Now I'm not making any cuts. You know, I cut the corner down one time. That was my first cut of the morning. And then I can start there and work my way out. Does that make sense? Pretty slick. So that's one way that I like to see that. And we can show that. I can actually cut this down and we can put it up. I just got some trim screws for today, holding that in place. So this is a pretty good detail because this is pretty low maintenance, especially if they sell it all as the one piece. PVC nowadays have a special paint you can put on it. If they don't want to see the white unfinished PVC, there's different paints you can use. I can come back and putty up those trim screws if I'd like to with a color matching caulk. But this allows you to move really fast because you do that once on that corner and then you just keep moving stone from there out, not making a ton of cuts. So anytime you can reduce the amount of cuts you make, the faster you're rolling. Anytime you can keep that nail gun in your hands, that'll keep you moving. So that's pretty simple and easy to do. A lot of times what I'll do on a job, if I'm doing a fireplace, for instance, right? And I've got two corners and they're 7 feet linear on both corners, right? I'll go over to my miter saw first thing in the morning and I'll just cut up a bunch of miters and I'll put a little bit of adhesive in the back of the cut, let them sit on a workbench, and then before I get started that day, I'll start putting my corners up, you know, a couple courses first and then fill it in, a couple courses first and fill it in. Helps me stay level and reduce the amount of cuts. And if I'm doing all my miters at the same time in the first thing in the morning, I don't have to go back over to that chop saw for a long time. It saved me from doing a cut, putting one, going back, doing another, going back and forth. Just do it all at the same time. So here we are. Again, that's my miter out of the same piece. I know that's going to line up. I'm not going to have any issues when I go to get it on the wall.
So are you gluing those miters together then or not?
Where are we? We're just putting a little, I'm just going to, and I'll show this right now, I'm just going to put a little adhesive in the back of the cut because, like I said, at the beginning of the day, I can make, whether it's going to be 30, 40, however many miters I need to make, I'll just put a little bit of glue in the back of that cut, let it sit, and then I'll go work on something else for a second, go finish unloading the car, whatever I got to do. And then I can come back. That miter, it might not be fully cured, but it's tight enough that I can put it on the wall and put nails around it and not have any issues. You could just put it up dry just like this, no glue, but what you'll find is one of the sides will sink in and then, oh man, now I'm off. Now that side sinks in and now that miter's not as tight as it could be. So instead of, and you can still get it tight without any adhesive, but it's just so much easier if you're starting from tight, if that makes sense. You know what I mean? Thanks, that's a good question. And yeah, I'm gonna show that. So yeah, the adhesive is really here just for helping hold that miter tight until you really get going. So I'll just put a little bit in the back of that cut, just like that, and then I'll let my squeeze out go to the back, right? So I'll let my squeeze out go to the back. I'll actually lick it, smooth that out. And if I really wanted to, I've got a 23 gauge pin nailer. I could set 2 of those in there. You'll never see it. And then you don't even have to wait for this to dry. You can just go right ahead. You can all get your hands on it and see it in real time here. Now, we're not requiring any of this. This is just me showing some tricks of the trade. Yeah, so there is one for going over masonry or foundation, and we'll get to that in a little bit. Where's that question? Yeah, we'll get to that in a little bit. So what I'm using in the back of this, I just keep the same adhesive in the van all the time because I don't want to see anything else on the job site. I don't want to see the guys have something that they're not supposed to be using. You know, I just don't want any mistakes to be made, so I make the process, you know, repeatable and with no fail. So I keep the same adhesive in the van all the time. It's a silo terminated polymer. It's a STP adhesive. This one's called Trem Grip. Lezzer does have that right here in Kerwinsville. Yeah.
Hey, what's this material made of, Dom?
So the way that I would describe this is a composite, right? So it's a hybrid polymer composite, and if you think about in the world of plastic, there's a plastic like his Pepsi bottle, right? Where if I add heat, I can soften it. And then if I add even more heat, I could actually get it to melt and reform it. This works in a different direction. You add a certain amount of heat, it only goes one direction. So this will never, I can never melt this down and reform it, right? This is closer to the plastic that they're using in the world of like marine and aerospace, which is why it's so lightweight and why it's so strong. Any questions about that? You guys like that little miter? Makes simple work. Makes real easy work of it when you come to a transition. So there's a corner option for exterior. I really like it. And nowadays on a lot of the modern homes with a lot of the grays and blues that you see in these patterns, a little bit of white accent on the corner is commonplace. You'll see it all the time. We can also transition from one siding to another. I've got the rain screen back behind my product because that's exactly what I need. But we can also show like I also have a sill, and the sill cuts. It's made out of the same material, and it goes on actually just face screwed right into the shear panel. So we'll show one of those. It's about 2 inches tall, give or take. It's got a 13-degree pitch slope to it. It's about 2.5 inches out, give or take. It's molded off of natural stone, so it's got the undulation of natural stone. And the way that I'm fastening this, I've got some fluted trim head screws, right? And again, I want to be out the back of that shear panel by at least a 1/2 inch. So I've got a 4-inch screw here. That'll get me something like that. All right? So I don't have to pre-drill this. I don't have to pilot this. I don't have to do anything special. I'm coming in about 4 inches from either side, and then I'll probably put one right in the middle. And I'm just going to hang that right on my wall. Just getting it started. So you all can come and see that. You can see those. For the most part, I can see that. I'm 4.5 feet away. There are different ways to touch that up. What I prefer to do is at the end of the day, right, I've done a whole wall of sills. I'll open a tube of like textured caulk, like granulated sealant. Today I brought some Moreflex gray, and I'll touch that up, I'll butter that up, and then I'll come back with a little bit of dust off this miter deck, and I'll just touch that up. And once that's cured, it's a very, very good color match. And it's not drawing your eye's attention. Make sense?
So the sills come in certain lengths, different lengths?
This is a 20-inch sill. So right now that's what we have as standard. And they do have slightly different textures and slightly different, you know, a bunch of variants in the piece, but they're all about 20 inches. Color fade, that was a good question. Who asked that? Perfect, good question. So it is a composite, and just like almost any other material, even natural stone itself, you take a natural stone, you bust that piece in half, the inside of that is going to be lighter than the outside that's been patinaed for 5.2 billion years or whatever, you know. So yes, to a degree. Is it noticeable? Not really. And it'll happen within the first 2 years. I mean, I've got this stuff down in the Caribbean. I've got this stuff, you know, on the equator where it's getting massive amounts of salt water and UV exposure. I mean, we were down there and it was 100 degrees at 9 o'clock in the morning. I mean, it's getting baked. So there will be an initial fade similar to anything else. It's a lot less than say like a vinyl, and then it'll stay that way for forever. After that initial shock, it just in perpetuity it'll be like that. No, I mean it's just as brittle as or as rigid as the day that it's made. So that stone that you felt this morning, that's it. We have a Class B fire rated offering product, right? So when you get up with Lezzer folks, you say, hey, I'm doing a fireplace, make sure I get the Class B. So, and that's true for basically all interior residential. So for my fireplace though, say it's new construction and somebody ordered a gas insert. And on the first 2 pages of that manual that it comes with, pay attention because it'll say non-combustible zone, 4 to 6 inches sometimes on the sides, and then maybe 8 or 10 or 12 or 16 or whatever it might be on the top. And a lot of times the steel trim kit that comes with it is the non-combustible gap. So you would put that in and then you can run your stone up to the non-combustible gap. So it'll say it has to be made out of steel, it has to be made out of certain ceramic, it has to be made out of glass, it has to be made out of concrete, flagstone, whatever is truly non-combustible, and then our Class B can come up to that. And the best thing to do for that is tell your inspector ahead of time, say, hey, I'm using Class B, this is where I'm supposed to be allowed to use it. We good? And then he'll say, yeah, you're fine. And a lot of times if it's new construction and it's not repair remodel, I'll tell the drywall guy to hold off on the framing of the chase of that fireplace, and then I'll put a cheap, if there is such a thing, a cheap sheet good over those studs. I'll paint it black or gray, and then I'll start shooting stones over that. And you don't need this interior, right? Because you're not fighting bulk water. Does that make sense? Does that answer your question? Cool. And then we actually have a bunch of good videos on the website of guys doing fireplaces. I mentioned the Perkins Brothers earlier. I think maybe next month I'm doing my 3rd or 4th fireplace with those boys. So yeah, they love it for fireplaces. And that's a quick job. That's where 2 or 3 guys can get in and get out on a fireplace in a day. If you figure out how you want to do your corners too and lay it out during the framing phase, if you can space it to where you don't have to make any cuts, you can just keep going back and forth on your courses until you're done. Or if you do have to make a cut that's turning into the wall so that you don't have to, see it. Fireplaces are a great job to start to get familiar with the product because, you're like, okay, I got a decent sized fireplace. It's 100 square feet. I can do that in a day, So just something to consider. Any other fireplace questions? You guys doing a lot of fireplaces? Not too much? Yeah, those are a very good starter project. Like if I were to recommend anybody to start doing something, I'd start them with a fireplace. And everyone's mom or everyone's aunt has a fireplace that they want to get redone. So that's a plus. No shortage of demand for fireplaces redone. As I'm getting this ready to touch up, anybody have any other questions?
Do you guys offer anything with a grouted application, like a cobblestone look or anything like that?
So in the beginning of time, remember I was telling you that this material at least has been around for a long time? The issue with that, and you're talking about, we had stones that were like 2.5 inches thick and we were using like 15 gauge and all this other nonsense. When you go to grout it, this has less than 0.5% of water absorption, or less than 0.1%. So it's a composite, right? So it's not absorbing any water, and you need that for traditional grout applications. What happens is, during that first freeze thaw cycle, everything will crack away from the stone. It might stay there, but you see this perfect hairline fracture all the way around this stone. So that's part of the reason that, when we went to get this thing ICC certified out of the box, one of the things that we were fighting was how do we go about the grout? And until somebody comes out with polymer modified grout that, yeah, what you could do, what we found that's almost unreasonable as far as cost goes is you could use a synthetic textured something like that, but then, if I'm using a whole tube in a square foot and a tube of sealant or adhesive is somewhere $6 to $8 or $8.50, my cost is through the roof now. So that's why we started with the dry stack look. Not that it's not off somewhere in the future, but for right now, yeah, we have to,
Yeah, I mean, I prefer the dry stash look.
Yeah, the dry stack look, it also allows you to go fast. Especially when the box is pre-blended for you and you dump it out and you just kind of can click the pieces together with basic Lego skills. Yeah, it's fast. Any other questions? Anybody?
Can you get that stuff to look like wood or brick?
So the same material, yes, I do use I do use it. So I have a commercial playground business that is also out of Winchester, Virginia. This stuff is also made in Winchester, Virginia. And what we do is like natural things, natural elements that are climbing related, like trees, big climbing boulders and things like that. So yeah, we do in that world. But as far as our construction offerings, our true construction products, that's what we have now. We did like a sneak peek at the International Builder Show down in Orlando. We showed off our Shisugiban, which is that Japanese charred lumber. Have you ever seen that? Yeah, we demoed that, and we demoed just as like a teaser, and then we had like a concrete board form concrete, and we showed that. But it's not something that's on the market as of yet. But yeah, the material, you'd be surprised what we can't make out of it. I mean, we do a whole lot of very high-end custom, chandeliers, all kinds of cool stuff. Yeah. So yeah, I'm just touching this up with a little bit of this textured sealant from our buddies at Sashco. Well, that's enough. Another trick you can do, and what I might do today is, if you've got a scrap of stone here, you can take a cutoff, take some shavings, and putty it up with that as well. And I had a carpenter buddy of mine. He showed me a trick. He just took some wood glue. He mixed it with some of the dust off the chop saw, and he used that as well. He said it looked great. So yeah, this is something I would do towards the end of the day. So once that cures, it'll dull out a little bit. And that's how I would touch that up. And I would do, if I had 30 feet on a wall, I would just do them all at one time. So, that one tube of caulk will last me an entire job too. Another thing that I wanted to mention is there's very little scrap. So at the end of a big job, what happens is as you go from one transition to another and you have to make a cut, hold on to that piece because it's going to fit on the other side of that door, or as you get to the inside corner or the next transition, the way that the math works out. Just like with flooring or tile or anything else that's laid out, you're going to end up using that piece. So if you separate your cutoffs, you'll be able to use them again. There's nothing that says you can't take a cutoff and put it somewhere else. And I mean, you can cut a piece down pretty slim and still be able to get a handful of nails in it. Just to demonstrate, there's a piece there. It's not gonna explode. It's not gonna break. I'm hitting the center of the mass of that piece. And yeah, you can even small scraps, hold on to them because you can reuse them down the line. The number that I'm hearing back in the field is about 3% waste. And that's generally guys who have only done 2 or 3 jobs. A guy who's done a bit more jobs and has more experience, he can cut his waste down in half from that 3%. So yeah, at the end of the job, at the end of like a fireplace job, everything should fit in a shoebox. So the gear that I'm set up with, I might as well talk to you about it. I'm somewhere between a trim guy, a framing guy, and a siding guy. I've got a little bit of different things from all of those worlds. You can cut it with your chop saw. If you're getting to a transition where the grade is running away from you, you can use a table saw. I brought that today if anybody wants to see cuts being done at a at a taper. We could take it outside and we could fire it up, and I'll show you how to taper it down to a grade that's transitioning. We have a couple tips and tricks. One thing that is cool about a cutoff piece, something that I'll put back out there to you, is I can so the color, it runs all the way throughout that piece. That's a really good thing for us. Right now, because I just made a cut, it's a little bit lighter than the rest of the material. So if that piece were to be hanging out, you would see a flush cut. Something that you can do with that flush cut is burnish that edge a little bit. I've got a waffle face hammer that I keep with me. It's just a drywall hammer. That has become my #1 go-to, and I can burnish that edge a little bit. And I would only ever be doing this in a high visible area, but if you get smart with your cuts, you could take your flush cut and butt it up next to a stone with a taller profile, and you're not going to see it. But if this was hanging out in the middle of space and it was exposed, you can do that with my waffle face hammer. I've got a El Cheapo chisel from Harbor Freight. It's pretty dull. I can kind of whittle that edge a little bit. And then one thing that I can do now that I've kind of tooled it over like a mason would and burnish that edge, I can take a can of, this is a wax-based sealer, right? Thompson's Clear Water Seal in a can. I just hit that edge a little bit, and it brings that patina back out, making it look, rockish again. So I'll show this piece around. I've got one cut edge on it, and then I've got one edge that we textured on it. You know what your job is. So can you see where I textured that? And then there's the exposed cut. So if somebody hits it with a weed whacker or a lawnmower or something like that, you've got options. You can pop a piece out and put a new piece in. If you've got a larger piece, you could cut it down to fit that exact spot. If you leave the leftover materials just like a flooring guy or a tile guy would, under the basement stairs or in the garage, you go in the garage, you can pry a piece out. Probably not that one, but if I wanted to pry a piece out, I could. So if that was my problematic piece, I can slap a new one in there. I could snip these nails off or bend them in, and I can just put it right back. Any questions about that?
So the nails that you're using, they're like heavy duty ones, like they're strong?
They're not terribly easy to back out. Did you see how when I backed it out, the nails came with the stone? Okay. When I pulled that out, the nails are coming with the stone, and that's kind of what you want. We did what's called a negative pressure test, right? It's called the ASTM E330. They take a 4x8 wall assembly, they stick it in a pressure chamber that's acrylic like that, and it's steel, and they got a 2-foot port, and they just draw pressure on it, trying to find the withdrawal strength of a finish nail, because when I was calling all these nail manufacturers, nobody had any of the withdrawal strength numbers on their own product. So when they tried to pull the stones off, the first time they did it, they bent the OSB from the studs all the way out that it took a 3.5-inch ring shank nail out of the center stud all the way with it. And then the second time I did that test, we had to screw and Gorilla Glue the OSB right over the studs. And when they did the vacuum again, I split the stud in half lengthwise on a 2x6 before any of the stones come out. So the moral of the story is 397 PSI when the stones are all together, 397 PSI to get that stone to come out. Yeah, but also you're obtaining that with a chisel or a pry bar when you go to move that stone off. Yeah, it's not something that's coming off on its own. We got a video of a guy doing, he's doing pull-ups on an individual stone. If you're transitioning between sidings, you've already got your weather-resistant barrier up. You can use a flash right over that sill, or just the stone. If I'm not doing a sill, I can just transition right to the stone, and then I can put my new siding from there up, flashing appropriately. That's a very, very simple thing to do, and that's a common thing to do. People have stone on the first 4 or 5 feet, and then they'll do, shake or something else, a Hardy product or something, LP, whatever, on the way up. Consider that. And then we have a detail for going over foundation. If you check us out online, there's 2 ways to address foundation. I'm making a video this weekend on going over foundation in 2 different methods. One method is the adhesive method. We got this adhesive that is very tenacious, and then we've got this primer. I prime the substrate, I prime the back of the stone, and I do vertical beads of adhesive to allow for that drainage and that drying. Okay? That 1/8 inch is continued by doing those vertical beads to allow that water somewhere to go. So that's an adhesive method. It's a little bit slower, right? And you're using a lot of adhesive, a lot of primer, and you're doing a balancing act too, because the primer's got to be tacky enough but not over cured, and then you got to start doing your beads and all that before you get it on the wall. Another way to do that is to fur out on the foundation. I use 3/4 inch 1x4s, 16 inches on center. I put that over the foundation, and then I'll cover it with 1/2 inch treated ply, and then I'll do this. And that way I've got the nail gun back in my hand, and I'm doing that over the foundation. And that 3/4 inch, that furring strip allows me to get the nails to pass through without getting squirrely on the concrete. And it's much, much faster approach. But a couple of people have done it. A lot of commercial guys do that. They'll be in a parking lot, and they'll frame the whole thing out with 1x4s, clad it in, put the rain screen up, put the weather-resistant barrier up, put the rain screen up, and then start shooting stones. It's a much faster approach. So that's foundation. That's kind of a lot of it in a nutshell. One more thing about cutting. If I come, people always talk about accessories. Hey, I need a light box. I need an outlet box. I need this. I need that. What's really cool about the material is you can make, at any point in time, say I had to come around to a hose bib, you can make all of your own accessories because the material is so workable. I got an 1.5 inch hole saw here. Let's mock up a hose bib. That's how easily that you can get through the material. Nothing special. That's just a regular old Milwaukee dull hole dozer. And so that could be if my copper's coming out here, right? I can slip that over, or if it's already there and this is a repair remodel and I'm redoing the siding, I can take this, cut it in those 2 pieces, set it tight around that hose bib, and nail that up. Now I'm not messing with a special accessory that I got to wait to come in for 2 weeks or anything like that. You can just do it on site. You can cut different, like I talked about the table saw earlier. I use that a lot of times if I'm doing a gable end and I got like a 6/12 pitch and I'm making the same cut over and over and over again. I use I'll just take 2 pieces of plywood and run that through the table saw, and I'll be able to make the same cut over and over and over again. My carpenters probably know what I'm talking about there. That's the simplest way to just be able to guarantee I'm making the same pitch, same pitch, same pitch. And the thing is, you can cut up, you know, you can cut up 20 pieces at a time, take them up the ladder, and just put them right on the wall. Make real quick work of it. Another thing you can do is, you know, if I've got a window where I just need to nip a corner out of a piece, you know, if I'm up on a ladder or whatnot, and say I got, you know, a cut man on the job, you can very easily mark out what you need taken out. And I've just got a regular utility blade on this multi-tool. And that prevents me from having to do a whole lot of crazy. If this was my window, now I'm there. I just saved myself a whole lot of time of messing around with, you know, wet saws and whatnot. Very easy to work. Any problem that you can come across in the field, you can address with the properties of the material by being able to work it. You just got to be smarter than a fake rock.
About doing foundations, is it okay for ground contact?
This is, right? Water doesn't hurt this. I built aquariums out of this same material. The problem is it floats. So they spent more on epoxy and anchoring it down to a aquarium than they did on all the rock work I did. But yeah, it doesn't bother ground contact. Expansion and contraction also not an issue. Look, I got expansion joints basically built into it. It's an open clad system, right? I'm also less than 0.5% of expansion and contraction from -40 degrees to 160 degrees. What you worry about in the world of expansion and contraction, especially in new construction, is the other products. The window, if I got a vinyl window, I know that window is going to be moving radically in this direction. But we have a lot of give in our open clad system. But pay attention to the hold. This is a very good point. Pay attention to the hold-offs of those manufacturers. The window guy will tell you, don't have a siding material, you know, hold off 1/4 inch, or he'll call for a caulking joint of 1/4 to 1/2 inch or something like that. You know, that's why I like these channels, is because I can sneak behind that channel, not on every stone, but at some part of almost every stone. I can make that cut and slide that back behind the channel, not butting into the trim. You know, you can come and see, I've just tucked it behind there. I still have a 1/2 inch before I get to the PVC.
So you recommend using some type of channel around windows instead of like?
So if it depends on how the window trim is built. If it's one of these cased out windows, if you have insulation on the outside, you know, it depends on the profile that you're going for. Generally speaking, I would like to trim it out. I would like to see something PVC around it or something real sharp looking, and then bring my stone up to that, you know. And you can leave you're not caulking for water intrusion. We've got this to handle the water. We don't care. We know the surface of the stone is going to see 80-90% of a regular rain event, right? It's that's the surface area. The other 10 or 20% that gets blown through there in a heavy wind-driven event has somewhere to go. It hits this hydrophobic facing, beads up, runs out, or if it gets blown through that, it's got that entire gap to drain out of and allow it to dry quickly when the sun comes back out or when it stops raining. And then behind that, this is controlling all your vapor. This system is why I don't mind throwing a bunch of nails in there. But yeah, I'm not caulking for the water per se. I'm caulking more for a cosmetic and to allow that window to keep moving.